the backrooms, this eerie pool video, and TD maps. What do all of these things have in common? They're all liminal spaces in which reality, at least as we understand it, is a bit altered. These areas of non-reality, or at least reality which does not bend to our traditionally understood perception of what an area is supposed to be, are now a common staple in internet indie horror, like the backrooms, or, if we go further back, creepypasta like Herobrine, with their fog and their mysterious apparitions in the corner of your eye in an alone world. Most of these spaces are characterized by their emptiness, their lack of context, the fact that they are scrambled depictions and warpings of our comfortable inside, as described by scholar Peter Heft. The uncharacteristic, non-standardized outside is thus a, quote, rupturing of the very fabric of experience itself that comes to define our reality, our inside. We are like aliens in our worlds, not being able to comprehend what we are within. It's also for this exact reason that most liminal spaces are solo experiences. If we were to be with another person, if we had any sort of hint or part of regular experience to cling on to, the inside stays intact. Therefore, as described by Heft, encounters with horrors of the liminal, the beasts of an eldritch and indescribable nature, quote, must occur in secluded, run-down areas because secluded locations are thresholds between the world of appearances and the world of things as they are. This is what I intend to explore and project onto TD, especially its map design. Liminal spaces, as mentioned beforehand, are now a staple in the internet horror genre, and therefore I'd like to expand upon the concept because what I gave before was a pretty short introduction. Liminal spaces aren't a new thing. In a sense, they've always been a part of horror. The zones, as Heft calls them, have been a part of horror, or at least film, since the 1970s, or at least that's the earliest example he gives. As with Stalker, a 1979 Soviet science fiction film about a zone infected by a mysterious supernatural entity, the meteor responsible for creating the zone, mutating it and creating what Heft calls a zone of anomalous materiality, is precisely what creates the liminal, warping the area and bending reality itself to its will. The laws of physics, the laws of our world are destroyed. They are flipped upside down in this universe. Thus, here, liminality is caused by an outside intruder, an anomaly, shifting the very fabric of our understanding of the world itself. This liminality is, however, not what we see in modern horror. Rather, in the modern context, we observe a liminality which is caused by a lack of anything. Sure, in the backrooms there may be a scary creature roaming the halls ready to kill you, but a large part of the reason why it's so scary is not only its horrific eldritch design, but also that there's nothing else. Our inability to piece together anything of our regular material understanding, the inside, is what creates this fear. The fear of not being able to understand both the beast and the seemingly infinite, wet, damp corridors of the backrooms is what scares us. We have nowhere to run to, no one to scream to, no one to comfort ourselves with. If we take an example outside of horror for a moment to discuss the uncomfortability one feels when seeing liminal spaces, we can take a schoolhouse. A schoolhouse isn't scary whatsoever. In fact, it is usually a place of joy. It is therefore only scarier and eerier when the schoolhouse lacks the one thing we usually associate it with: people. When the schoolhouse is empty, completely devoid of any children, teachers, or sound, it is stripped of its context. And with no ties to reality left to us, it becomes a threshold between two worlds where anything can happen. With the schoolhouse, the eeriness comes not from a threat imminent to our danger, as in most horror, but rather comes from the fact that nothing is normal. Nothing means anything here. We are in an in-between place, devoid of any of the reasoning, natural laws, or anything that standardize and come to structure our reality. We are constantly reminded of this in the liminal, when in the back rooms we see no junk, no equipment which reminds us of a life on the outside. Just the same walls, the same wallpaper pattern, and the same strangely damp carpet. When in the schoolhouse, the only thing to hear and see are your own shadows, and the sound of the clock ticking away. Time feels impossibly slow, as if the sound of time ticking by is a mere illusion and a twisted, torturous mirage of the normalcy that this space is void of. But it is not real. Time isn't ticking by on the clock as it would be in our world with context. For even the slightest hint of returning to the inside, of yet once more returning to the island and merely peeking out at the black sea of infinity, harboring all we do not understand, instead of being submerged in it, would mean the eerie disappears. Here, in these infinite, deterritorialized zones, brimming with as much potential as there is nothingness, there's no such things as facts. So we finally come to the main drawing point of this video, which is how TD uses liminal aesthetics to its advantage in terms of horror. TD does definitely use liminality to its advantage, with its maps being devoid of anything but the players you're surviving alongside and fog obscuring your view to only a few meters around your character, but it also does this more subtly than other more explicitly liminal projects like the Backrooms. Therefore, zooming in on TD maps in and of themselves is like stripping away any context that humanizes them. It is, by the Heftian definition, that which makes something liminal. Not Perfect and Kind and Fair are both maps which are similar to the schoolhouse example provided earlier, and comparisons can be made between the two, and thus will be the ones I focus on. Kind and Fair, both in naming and the way the map is designed, is the better of the two. The bright colors, neon signs all around, and themes reminiscent of a playground provide the space to necessitate the creepiness needed to make liminality work. For liminality, not only is the lack of context needed, but also the space for which such an absence would be liminal. To borrow from a different discussion in Heft's paper, it is the tension between our conception of how the world should be and how it appears to us. The reason Not Perfect doesn't quite fit the bill in its liminality is twofold. It has big, open gaps into an infinite void, letting us understand that the space we are in is not a warping of reality, but rather wasn't ever reality in the first place. And the area suddenly shifts around the 132nd mark, as a portal to a different part of the map appears, which is significantly more traditionally horror-themed than the rest of the map. Returning to Kind and Fair, one must imagine a reality where all music, all player interactions, and even the EXE are removed. This is where Kind and Fair excels, providing for a liminal experience quite unlike any other within the TD universe. The player is submerged within a foggy, sickeningly fake-looking plastic environment, which resembles some kind of play area, like the equally faux-looking McDonald's play place at night, or when no children occupy its tiny halls. It feels wrong. Instead of hearing the roars of 7-year-olds letting off some energy as they await a Happy Meal or something of the like, there is but only the sound of your feet hitting the floor. No one, not a single strand of the inside is left. It has been scrambled, imploded from an encounter with the outside, rupturing the thin veneer separating them from one another and keeping our delicate reality in order. We are left to our own devices in a world devoid of any reason that we previously used to navigate the black seas of the unknown, a world wherein we must live with a reality where new rules need to be accounted for, which we are incapable of understanding or conforming to. Therefore, if these rules wish us harm and any who encroach on the zone or the map in this instance, we are powerless and oblivious to change it. We are subject to its will entirely, and if we do not respect it, it will punish. However, whilst this does indeed sound terrifying and could make for a great VR experience, especially if it included an EXE stalker-like entity, this is not what the average TD experience is like. No, the average TD experience actually keeps our delicate inside intact and allows for an experience of the game to be had without even the slightest hint of the liminal. TD is like a double-edged sword when it comes to liminality. It has the potential, the foundation for liminal spaces of horrifying proportions, but due to it being a multiplayer experience, it does not put these attributes to good use. This is not a critique of the game dev, nor the game itself. I love it, that's why I'm on this channel. But rather it's an acknowledgement of how liminality works fundamentally. We are usually playing with others, be they other players in and of themselves or people who you're talking to with over a Discord call. They're attachments which anchor us to reality, whereas something like the original Backrooms creepypasta does not. Its selling point consists of exactly that you are not near anyone. No amount of screaming, no amount of searching around the infinite corridors will yield you a connection back to understanding. Instead, you will always be met with the same peculiar wallpaper again and again and again and again and again. So, to come to a conclusion with this video, I'd like to say that TD is a flawed liminal project. When using the word flawed, I don't mean any moral context behind it. I don't mean it's bad. I don't mean it's good. In fact, if I thought it was bad, I don't think I'd be on this channel focusing on TD content or spend my time writing the script. Rather, I think the game has the foundational pieces of a liminal project, but it doesn't act upon them. Now that makes sense. It's a multiplayer experience where you get mad over your shadow ditching you because he seemingly forgets that there's other players in the game too. And it doesn't lend itself to slow burn horror. And that's cool and dope. I just wanted to explore liminality as a concept because I think it's cool and how the maps of TD fit pretty well within this framework. And I think I've gotten my point across pretty clearly. So, thank you for watching. Also, play TD now. It's really cool and awesome.